folks streaming in and to see so many different countries we have represented here today. I'm particularly proud of this event you're here for. It's a series that was built out of feedback and questions that we've heard from students and early career folks through literally hundreds of conversations online and in person. Resoundingly, we heard from you that you could really use some additional support figuring out how to move from education to career. And we knew that you wanted to build your networks and get inspired by your peers. Today, the Figma for Edu Career Livestream Series kicks off with a panel that brings together 5 early career designers to answer the question, what's a day in your life like? For this session, we've brought together designers from across industries to share their experiences and learnings as early career designers. I've had the chance to talk to all of these folks already, and I know you're going to really love hearing their perspective. Before we kick off, a few quick notes and housekeeping. Okay, first, this session will be recorded and we're going to make sure that we share it out to you after the event. Second, please make sure that you're using the Q&A section to add your questions. I'm going to be gathering those throughout, and we'll use the last 10 minutes of our time together to get you some answers from these lovely panelists. Okay, third, please set your chat to everyone, and that's just to make sure that we can hear your voices. We want you to be chatting throughout the process, and this is an open conversation we want you to be part of. And lastly, please be kind to one another and follow our Figma community guidelines. They can be found at that URL on the screen. One guideline to call out before we get started, please don't engage in any self-promotion or share LinkedIn URLs in the chat today. Distracts from the conversation. Okay, with that, thank you so much. And without further ado, I'll pass the mic to my teammate, Helena, from the Figma product design team, who'll be leading our conversation today.
Thank you so much, Alex. Hey, everybody. I'm super excited to be here with everybody. My name's Helena, and I'm a product designer here at Figma. So yeah, I can't wait to get started. So how about we just jump right in? So maybe to begin with, we can just have everybody introduce themselves a little bit and share how they got into design. So how about we start with you, Maritza?
Yeah, hi everyone. Super excited to be here, joining this conversation. I'm joining from LA, by the way. So hey, everybody from LA too. Shout out to LA. So I'm a designer, an information designer at an information design agency, and information design it's pretty small niche. So it's basically working with data. So things like reports. One of the specialties at the place I'm working at now is microsites. So if you've seen like annual reports that are scrollable, you can visit a microsite on different data, stuff like that. So that's what I do now. And how I got started in design was all the way in freshman year. I graduated in 2020. And freshman year is when I decided to be a fine arts major and concentrate in design. And I was really interested in communication and just ways to communicate with people. In particular, I was interested in the Latinx community when I was in college, and that was a big tool. There was no like designers who were Latinx, so I saw that as one of my skills that I could bring to the community, and that's how I got really involved in it. And then afterwards, I started getting more technical. I'd love to do more technical things at the end of my college career. And that's when I got into information design and working with data viz. So it kind of pivoted a bit from the branding, but I think it's been a really interesting niche and it has a whole other set of challenges aside from design, when it comes to storytelling. So that's me.
Thank you so much, Maritza. How about you, Risham?
Hey everyone, great to meet you. I'm Resham. I'm a new grad from Berkeley. So I graduated with a BA in cognitive science and psychology last year. Moved across the bridge, based in San Francisco, and I work as a product designer at Meta. I'm currently tuning in from Miami. Really excited to chat with you all. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you. Tolu.
Yeah, hi everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All good. Yeah, I'm Tolu. I'm calling in from Toronto, Canada. I'm a product designer currently at Dropbox, designing for video experiences at Dropbox. Before that, I graduated software engineering at the University of Ottawa, also here in Canada. And I also like to mention as well, part of my heritage is being Nigerian. I was born and raised in Lagos. I see a few Nigerians joining here on this call. So shout out to all of you. And I'm super excited to be here.
Awesome. Loving all the shout outs. Liza.
Yeah, hi everyone. So I am a designer at an agency in Brooklyn called Argo Design. We're a digital product design agency, but we do a little bit of everything. We have 4 studios, again, in the Brooklyn studio. And about my background is I started college as a software engineering major at RIT in Rochester, New York. Then I switched to a front-end development major and eventually found design, which is, I think, one of the best things that has happened to me. Then once I graduated in 2021, I got an internship at the agency that I'm currently at, moved to full-time, and then have been working on a variety of projects at the agency, working on strategy, design systems, UX, UI, a whole range of things.
Very cool. Mackenzie?
Hi, I'm Mackenzie. Currently in Wisconsin, but I'm all over the place, honestly. I am working as a mostly freelance UX designer. I got into design during the pandemic, like a lot of us did. I was in education for a bit, teaching overseas and here, but I had a long history in art and music from basically age 4. And finding design was my nice little bridge in between helping out people and keeping that creative side of my brain alive. I currently work with the National Zoning Atlas, the Hawaii sector specifically, to help create zoning tools to make zoning laws more easily accessible to the general public and hopefully find different ways to make affordable housing more accessible.
Amazing. Well, so cool to see how everyone's background is so diverse, and the work that everybody's doing right now is also so different from one another. So excited to hear more about it. All right. So we're in a panel called Today in the Life. And I think we've all seen a lot of content out there that, you know, reflects or maybe doesn't reflect what a day in the life of a designer looks like. It might romanticize a little bit what a day in the life looks like. So maybe to begin with, I'm curious to hear, what do you feel like is not represented in the kind of content you see out there in social media that maybe should be? Tolu, how about we start with you?
Yeah, definitely. And again, love the energy in this chat. You all are amazing and really amazing panelists. So I would say like, so many meetings. I think like that's something that we don't talk about enough, is that the job is really about, and of course like that in itself is a design challenge, like figuring out how do I structure my week so that I can actually get heads down time and actually just work and do the work. But also it involves like rethinking how I think about those meetings. It's not just they're not aside from the work, but they are part of the work. And I often like to tell people design is sales, whether it is you're selling people on, you know, on your design, you're trying to, you know, help move people away from a particular design. And take shout out to all of us who've had to be like, maybe we shouldn't do that. And sometimes that's also sales work too. So it's figuring out what's important and what's not important. I think is part of that day in life that really isn't talked about. And I think those are the things that help you figure out what meetings are important, which ones aren't, which ones, you know, maybe you shouldn't be taking, which ones you should be taking. But I like to, you know, tell everyone to think of those things as design challenges themselves, and what better design challenge to solve than how you work yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. That definitely resonates with me. Liza, how about you?
Well, I also have a lot of meetings, but usually I go to them all. How do I do it? I don't know. But yeah, meetings are a lot sometimes, but my agency, we tend to work super collaboratively. So it's a lot of hands-on working sessions some of the time. I would also say something that people don't tell you is how much collaboration personally I like to be doing in my work. So I live in Brooklyn. I don't live that far away from my studio. A lot of people come into the office, and I think especially as a young designer, just learning things, the best way to do it for me at least is through diffusion. So just experiencing my coworkers doing things, collaborating with them, getting their thoughts on things, getting another pair of eyes on something, I feel like has improved my work so much. And I think that's a lot of what I don't see in those TikToks of people working from home all day. And that's the part of my job that I think I enjoy like a lot, the most maybe.
Nice. Yeah, that's so awesome that you have that in-person experience there, being able to collaborate with people like that. So yeah, I'm kind of curious, maybe a little bit more like getting into the weeds and the details of what a typical day might look like, a typical work day would look like. Risham, you want to start?
Yes, absolutely. First of all, yeah, 1,000 times yes. There are so many meetings and so many different things to keep a track of, especially at a large organization like Meta. It can be kind of overwhelming, to be frank, as a new grad when you are trying to transition from being a student to being a full-time professional, and you're sitting in and chatting with PMs and reading through strategy documents, collaborating with other designers, familiarizing yourselves with acronyms that can be sometimes like very company specific. But I would say that my typical day like really tends to vary a lot based on where we are in a certain project. So for example, if it's more early stage, there might be it might be much more vague and we spend a lot more time brainstorming, or we spend a lot more time kind of strategizing and figuring out whether it would be a worthwhile investment, what our milestones would look like over a period of weeks or months, and what our end result, what sort of shared goal we're moving towards essentially. And then it can also include like presenting. There's a lot of presentations, which was something that kind of surprised me, that a lot of your work as a product designer is actually, I would say it's maybe 50% or less within like designing in Figma, but like a lot more also about how you present your work and how you communicate to your leaders about the value that you're creating.
Thank you. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Mackenzie, do you feel like your days feel like that, or what are your days like?
I feel like I can relate in the sense of not every day is the same. I do mostly freelance work, and I also work between 8 or 9 different time zones at any given time. So I mean, I don't have a typical day. It really just depends on what's going on that day for me. Usually there's a combination of meetings, brainstorming, co-working, all remote, usually a lot of staring at my screen, and I've got a giant screen. And so I definitely make sure in my day, the only thing that's pretty standard is I take pretty substantial breaks, whether it's a nap or, just opening the door right next to me and walking outside, because I definitely feel like as designers and as anyone in tech really and working from home, we can really get sucked into staring at the screen all day and not really having a proper, hey, it's time to clock out for lunch. So I'd say I don't have a typical day. It really just depends on what project's going on at that moment.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, it requires so much discipline to be like, all right, I'm going to go have lunch now. I'm going to take a break now. So that's great that you're calling that out.
Can I?
Yeah, go for it.
Can I quickly add that I found it really helpful just figure out one day of the week that's just like a work day and just like hard reject all the meetings. I'm just like, no. Oh, like that's really helped me just like get one day in, and it's like some semblance of a routine, and that day feels like it's mine and not like given out to other people for a lot of different things. So just to let people know, it's not all like no control over anything. I encourage a lot of folks to just like hard block one day. Like that's something I found super helpful working in Dropbox.
Yeah, that's a great tip. And so kind of related to what you just said, like, we've talked about kind of like a lot of meetings, a lot of having to communicate out to stakeholders. So I'd love to hear, just like, what's the most fun part of your job so far, and what do you really enjoy and what do you like? Maritza, you want to share?
Yeah, well, for me, I love collaboration. So that's part of why I love the niche of information design, because basically we're using design as a tool to transform something that isn't like marketing or just copy, but it's data. So we're turning into some type of storytelling device. So in order to do that, you need to understand the data. So I love working with researchers. I love working with experts in anything, which is why, podcasts, all those things are interesting to a lot of people because you're like learning such depth, such rich information from an expert. So that's the part that I love about my job, is working with someone who's an expert in something that I'm not an expert in. So that could be a researcher, it could be a project manager, it doesn't even have to be a technical expertise. It could be like the leader of the project or of a company, just working with someone who is an expert in their field and has a lot of that rich information is really interesting to me, because I use that to inform my designs. And then I feel much more confident when I create. I feel much more able to present it and argue for my design choices or rationale or different directions and the pros and cons of them. So that's what I think gives me a really rich experience as a designer in this kind of interdisciplinary environment, is working with anyone who's not a designer. So, and I love working with designers too. They have tons of great ideas when we get into like critiques and stuff like that. So I love both, but I would say I have a special place for working with people who have a different expertise in design.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, it's such a joy to be able to work with somebody who is an expert and be able to learn from them.
Mm-hmm.
Mackenzie, what are you enjoying most so far?
I'd have to say it's the reminder that the work I'm doing is really going to help someone, especially with the Hawaii Zoning Atlas project. I mean, even when I'm doing an e-commerce, kind of client, I know that me making sure that I'm putting people first in my mind is the most important. I'm a very community-driven person, so anything I can do to kind of give back to my community in any way, shape, or form, no matter how stressful and chaotic it gets, it's like at the end of the day, I'm reminded that, man, this little thing I'm going to do, it's really going to help somebody. And whether it's helping someone feel seen or heard as, a person of color myself, or whether it's the tools that we're building to help combat the issues with affordable housing, those are definitely the reasons why I love designing.
Yeah, amazing. Liza, how about you?
I kind of touched on this earlier, but designing alongside and also learning from some of the most talented, funny, and cool people that I've ever met is probably my favorite part. My work environment, I'm very lucky to work in a place where everyone is so wonderful and there's a diversity of people, but also like opinions and ideas. And we just kind of love to talk about everything, including food. Every Wednesday, we have a family style lunch together, and it feels very homey, but not in the work is home, work family, it's unhealthy kind of way. And something else that I think is really great that I have the opportunity to work on is my studio, we have internal initiatives. So a lot of those are really focused on giving back to the community. Like we did a pro bono project for a food distribution service. And recently, me and a couple of my coworkers, shout out to the team, had the opportunity to run a workshop for students interested in design and just the arts, and show them about design as a career path. So I think working with great people and then giving back to the community with those people is my favorite.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that we're bringing up ways of being able to give back and care for others. Tolu, what are you liking at Dropbox?
Yeah, I would say that I think everyone's given really great answers to this. And so I'm gonna give maybe a slightly selfish one, is that I think as designers, you're expressing your POV into the world. You're expressing your point of view on how something should work and how a problem should be solved. Ideally, you're taking all the data. And so sometimes the best part of the job is just seeing that I got it right and seeing that that POV solves the problem for our customers and solves the problem for our users, and knowing that that's a thing that I built and it's out in the world and I can have a little sense of pride. And when people, my mother uses Dropbox and she sees a little thing and she's like, yeah, and I'm like, awesome. So yeah, it's a little a little selfish. I know it's a lot of our work is a group work, but there are the parts that are mine, and seeing that go out into the world and seeing people use it and be happy about it, I think that definitely makes the job fun.
Totally. Yeah, I'm definitely glad you brought that up. That's definitely something that keeps me motivated for sure as well. Cool. Okay, so one thing I'm curious about is, you've all kind of done some kind of design curriculum. So I'm curious about what skills that you've had to develop more on the job that have helped you be successful in your current role, that you weren't exposed to in your design curriculum. So yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
A lot of it is client-facing skills. When you're going through a formal design education, you're presenting all the time. So you have those skills kind of in your pocket already, but learning how to handle pushback from a client, guiding meetings back on track when necessary are things that I've had to kind of adapt to and learn over my year and a half, 2 years in my career so far. Also just, we call it client swirl, when a client is kind of being swirly about a topic, not wanting to give you a specific answer, kind of avoiding questions, how to get what you need out of them. And a lot of that is just communication skills, soft skills. I also used to do and teach improv comedy in college. And I think the ability to think on your feet and collaborate without an ego have also been super invaluable skills for me in my career.
Love that. Yeah, I love kind of bringing up these exterior skills that have come up now. Resham, how about you?
Yeah, I think there are a few things. Well, I never went through a design curriculum per se. I took more of the behavioral science route. But I think typically just being a good communicator and listener is so important. And I haven't seen many design curriculums just dedicate time and resources to teaching that, because I think just being present and actually attentive, and how to also communicate and ask good follow-up questions, ask really good non-leading questions. And I think my behavioral science training kind of helped me be more mindful of also digging deeper and identifying root causes. So really making sure that, if there's ever an experimental setup, that's clean, that you're getting good data and you're making the right inferences. And another thing I think at my role is learning to manage product constraints. There's so many different stakeholders that you have to please. So there are, of course, business objectives, there are product constraints, there's the resource allocation that your team and your PM will kind of help you perform. And then there's also, of course, the age-old tension of function and form at times, especially if you're working with a very robust, well-established design system, such as for Facebook or Instagram. So just balancing all of those constraints is also another thing. And also balancing goals is another thing, because, when you have all of these constraints, you also have sometimes trade-offs that you have to make. So I don't recall a design curriculum teaching me that stuff. It's kind of, you get thrown in the deep end and then you kind of have to figure it out on the job.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, a related question is, what's something that has felt surprising now that you are in this career? Maritza, has there been something that, surprised you?
Yeah, well, I think basically everything. So I think that's partially because my personal background, because I'm the first in my family to go to college and have kind of a more office job. So I didn't know what to expect at all. And it was something I was looking forward to. That was my goal, is to have this office job. You see those movies of people working in New York and LA, and it's I'll do that one day. And it was very different. I think because I had this media perception of it, that I saw it as more competitive, or more, it would be intense basically. But when I actually was there and got my first job, it was a pretty small company. And even the place I work now, even smaller. And I realized that people are just people, and there's plenty of good people, nice people, empathetic people, people that I can relate to. Even though I kind of had that preconception that I wouldn't be able to when I got into the career stage of my life. So I think everything surprised me about that people are normal people. And I got a lot of mentors, a lot of mentorship. in my first role, and that was like pivotal to me succeeding and learning fast, because I had people that I could talk to candidly. I had people that I could share my goals with or share my challenges with in particular, and they could give me more insight on what the broader landscape of the company is, or whatever the case is. So I think that was the thing that was most surprising to me, is that people are just people. You can talk to them, you can ask them questions, and I think what has worked for me is being open with others. And normally you get that in return, is like somebody will be open with you and honest and transparent, instead of having like the underlayer of like politics underlying a conversation. That's when things get a little bit tricky and are more difficult for me personally. So I think that has been definitely the thing that's surprising in a good way.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm so
Yeah.
glad that you've had that experience.
Yeah.
And it's a great reminder. Tolu, how about you?
Yeah, I think what's been most surprising for me, I'll probably say two things. The first one is the importance of the business of design. I think like, even though I'm still early in my career, I often say that like, I think going far in design, I've learned really early on that I'm designing in a business and I cannot ignore that. And I think ignoring that as a designer makes you kind of hard to work with, if I'm being honest. I think it's something you have to continue. I've had to keep in front of my mind. And I always thought that like, yeah, I could like do the design and somebody else is doing the business, and that's okay. But I very quickly learned, and it leads into my second point, that a lot of design is influence. Even as a junior or even as an early career designer, it really is about influence, and influence comes through people. And to really work with people, you have to care about what they care about. It's not just easy to say, yeah, I'm the designer and user experience and customer needs. It's never that cut and dry. Sometimes you have to care about what that other person cares about. So I've had to ask myself, what am I doing to meet my PM halfway? What am I doing to meet the engineer on my team halfway? Maybe I take a few hours out of my day to like dig into the code and like understand like what are the structures around like that like vaguely define how this works. Like, yeah, it's still auto magic in my head, but I have a fair idea of it. And that's where honestly my software background really helps a lot, because sometimes I can just like, like, hey, talk to me like I was a peer. I'm pretty sure like 80% understand this, and if I don't, I'll tell you which parts I don't. Or like spending a little bit more time with that strategy doc, not just glossing over it, but actually getting in there and coming back to your PM with some questions and saying, hey, like, I'm seeing that we're like referencing against this. I'm seeing that we're looking at that. Those are the things that really signal to people that you care about what they care about. And then when it comes time to actually get a design decision through, get something moving, you find that like, it's a lot easier to do that because they're bought in that you care about the same things that they care about. So that's probably been the most surprising thing, is that it's not just about having the best ideas. It's not just about having the fanciest designs. It is a job that involves people. And sometimes I gotta, get off my design horse and go hang out and, where they hang out.
Totally. Yeah, that's super well said. And I think that echoes so much of what has been said today around collaborating with cross-functional partners, and about so much of the work being around communication as well. Yeah, super interesting. So yeah, I guess I'm really curious to hear how y'all are staying connected and involved in the design community. Mackenzie, do you want to start?
Yeah, so kind of like I said earlier, I'm super community driven. I believe where I am today, I would be nowhere without my community. And I can say the same for design. I really like where it's just like people are just people kind of thing. And when it comes to designers, they are some of the nicest people you will ever meet. I typically, anytime I see someone having an open calendar, anytime I see someone who's doing a project that I'm kind of interested in and want to learn more about, I just reach out, because I found designers will either say absolutely yes, or they won't respond at all because they're busy. And then also going to any community event that I can. I have the privilege of being able to travel a little bit and going to conferences. There's a bunch happening in New York this week that I'll be at, even non-design ones. And then I also am a part of way too many newsletters and email sign-up lists, just to like kind of, I'll see an article that piques my interest. I'm really super interested in building design systems right now. So I see a design system email come through, cool, I'm going to read it. Especially ones that are like, hey, there is this online event going on, like have happy hour drinks online with a bunch of designers. And I just do what I can to talk to people as often as I can, because you don't know what you don't know.
That's amazing. Yeah. It sounds like between that and your job, you have a lot going on. So props to you to making it all happen, but sounds definitely worth it. Resham, how about you? How are you kind of connecting with the design community?
Yeah, so I love in-person events. I was definitely looking for a lot more like online stuff during the pandemic, which was through like Slack groups and Discord groups that kind of came up during that time. But I think now that I live in San Francisco, I really want to meet people like builders, designers, creatives, all sorts of people. So I actively look for conferences and networking events and just any other opportunities, even if they're not necessarily design related. If it's like, like an AI meetup, I'll even go to that. Or maybe it's like a fintech conference and I'll go and learn something new and just chat with people there. And I think also just tending to like existing and like creating new relationships is also very important to me. So I keep in touch with people that I meet. I treat them as friends, and we like usually, even if we meet at like a conference or an event, we usually end up being friends and hanging out in groups. And the design world is actually, it was really surprising to me, but it's much, much smaller than I actually initially thought. I feel like everyone kind of knows each other through like a second or third degree even, which is really cool because you can connect people and you can also ask others to connect you to people that you know about. Like you might recognize them by their name and their work, but it's just so easy to reach out to designers, and people are just people. I think that was really cool to me. But more recently I also started taking like a little more initiative and like planning and hosting events. So think about a a little over a week ago, I was like, all right, you know what, I'm not seeing enough like design only events, so I'm just going to host my own meetup. And I just like pulled one more design friend in, and we just told people, hey, come to this location, say hi. There's food trucks, you can grab like ice cream or food, and we can just like hang out in the sun and chat. And we actually had a pretty good turnout, and now we're like coordinating on like going to different conferences and events together. So now I'm like running into familiar faces all the time, and it's great.
That's so awesome. Yeah. Congrats to you for doing that. That sounds really, really cool.
I want to quickly also point out that I struggle with being connected to the community. So if you are, and you maybe get into design, or you're already in there, and it doesn't come as easy, that's okay. Like I think as well, like I was taking notes as like Resham was talking, like, oh my God, these are good ideas. Like I wish I was doing those, because I'm like most days it's like, oh, I want to go like lie down somewhere, because it's also just overwhelming being like that first 2 years of your career. So I also maybe wanted to just be a little like bare my soul and say, yeah, I totally struggle with that. I wish I was doing a better job. Like I was super excited when this happened, because I was like, oh my God, I get to meet people. So that this is my like big connection for the month.
Tolu, I just want to say that I'm super extroverted, and I definitely know that that comes as a privilege when it comes to networking and talking to people. I mean, like, there's a couple of design conferences where you will see my face in almost every single picture because I'm just talking to everyone. And so I definitely want to say that my advice is a lot of because I'm a very extroverted person and I like to talk.
Also, just to add on to what Tola and Mackenzie just said, well, I'm actually a sporadically extroverted person, so I'm like by nature introverted, but then there are times where I'm like, I would love to go out and meet people. But just wanted to say, like, never be afraid to just like host something. I feel like a lot more people are messaging me now and saying like, hey, are you guys hosting something in like New York or something else? I'm like, no, I live in SF. I wanted to meet people here. I just picked a time and location and told people to show up. And you can totally do that too. Just, like put it on LinkedIn, or if you're connected with someone in the design community and you want to meet more people, just like get together, like invite people to a park, tell them to like bring snacks, bring a, like a picnic mat or something. You don't need like a budget or like resources to host an event or connect with the community. I feel like everyone, like especially designers, are very like people oriented, and everyone wants to meet everyone and chat with them and share knowledge and resources and all of that good stuff. So there's nothing stopping you if you just want to, like, hey, we're having a design gathering. It's very casual, small scale. Come if you're free. This is the date and time. So just don't let anything stop you from doing that if you want to meet new people.
Liza?
Yeah, I'm gonna build on all of that a little bit and say, networking is, in my mind, a necessary evil in careers. I think it's super important to meet people and just like expand the people that you know. But I also sometimes find for myself, it feels icky and like I'm using people, and I really don't love that. So when I'm like meeting people in the design world, I seek out people that I know that I have things in common with a lot of times, and I'll just like reach out to them. And that way it's like I'm building a relationship with them professionally, but it's also a friendship, because I know it's someone that I like talking to, and I would talk to about non-just design related things. So that's something that I like to do. And I also think for myself, through my major in school, who Miguel used to teach at my program in school, but I regularly stay connected with my old major and help with portfolio reviews every semester. And I think for myself, I met a lot of great people through that and through events in school that I stayed connected to, and I reached out to and gave me some of the best career advice I've ever gotten in my entire life. And I think that's something that I like to pay forward, because when someone takes a chance on you and like gives you their time, and really like cares about you and builds a relationship with you, I think that's super special, especially with people who are coming up in their careers and looking for just like some sort of guidance. So anytime someone reaches out to me, I try to just give them my time as much as I possibly can. And I think if you're, like bringing it back to people are just people, don't be afraid to reach out to anyone. And you never know where it might land you.
Mackenzie, did you have any thoughts on that as the resident extrovert in the group?
Yeah, I mean, when you said like I feel icky sometimes, I think one of the things junior designers, especially people that I talk to that are just getting into design, and something that I know I grappled with was we can feel as though we're being manipulative because we know we're good with talking to people and we know we're good with understanding where people come from. So I feel like that icky feeling can come up so often, especially when you're like a junior, you don't have a job, or you've only had an internship and you're trying to find a job. I mean, I would just take it back to what we've been saying, people are just people. And that the design community is probably one of the nicest communities I've ever been a part of. No one is really here to get a leg up on one another. And everyone is just happy to chat. Everyone has imposter syndrome. I've talked to people with 20 years of experience, with 2 years of experience. And I feel like that icky feeling, no matter how long you're in it, it will never really go away. But definitely that I think that's why I made a little bit of a face, because I'm like, yeah, I've been there before. Even being extroverted, you can feel like I don't want to use people, I don't want to manipulate anyone. I just want to know what I don't know, and I want to keep learning and keep thriving and hopefully get a job. I know I'm looking for full-time right now, so I know it's rough out here. So I completely get that icky feeling.
Amazing. Well, thank you everybody for sharing. I think now we have a lot of questions coming in from the chat. Thank you so much for everybody who was contributing there. So now we'll kind of move to those questions. And yeah, whoever, has thoughts on it, just feel free to just go on mute and go for it. So there were some questions around kind of like degrees and boot camps. So maybe it sounds like some of the folks here have degrees, or maybe all of you. But do you think there's a chance for people with boot camp who are coming in through boot camps? And yeah, any kind of advice for folks who are coming in through boot camps or from alternative education methods?
If it's okay for me to do first, I went the boot camp route. I went to design lab, loved the experience. I went to university for live production, so a complete 360 from what I'm doing now. And then I taught for 6 years, like ESL and early childhood education. So I have a very strange background. I'd say if you're going the boot camp route, the biggest advice that I give to people, to any of my mentees and to anyone going the boot camp route, whether that be Coursera, Google, Design Lab, General Assembly, is be willing to put in the extra work during your boot camp, because you're going to get the building blocks, but you don't have the blueprint. You have to know how to actually put those blocks together to make something amazing. This comes, with the networking and everything, but I would definitely recommend going out of your way to do. I keep seeing ADP lists, going on ADP lists, getting other mentors. If you can go to online conferences, go to those conferences, talk to people. I feel like I haven't been asked once in any job or interview about where did you learn design? It's more so like, how do you design? What can you design? And what do you know? What experience do you have? And even if that experience is zero, what steps were you taking during boot camp to continue learning and to try to gain that experience?
Love that. Did anyone else want to share on this point?
For me, I'm not like a full product designer, but I recently transitioned from a more like graphic design and information design focused role to something. I was looking for something that was more in line with product design, basically interaction design, I would say, is more specifically, is what I wanted to go into next. And so during the whole like working on my portfolio and all that stuff, I had to keep that in mind too, that I don't have experience in this, but what can I do to get there? And then in terms of the interview process, I think it's also about showing how you think through challenges. Because I think I've also been on the other side of like hiring people instead of, going through the interview process as someone trying to get hired. And generally, people want to hire you. They want to find the perfect candidates. So I think that's the first thing. They want to find someone. It's pretty stressful to hire people and to find the right person. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, if you can show that you know how to learn something, that you don't need to know everything right at the beginning. If you can show that, okay, I'm a capable person to ask questions, to ask thoughtful questions on the spot, to like really listen to what you're actually saying, and that I've done my research in the company, all those different things. I think it's important to know that you don't have to know everything, especially if it's your first job. It's really important to just show that you can learn on the job and you can learn quickly, or whatever your skill set is, that you're a great communicator, presenter, you're a great technical person, you have those software skills, things like that. Just make sure that those things shine, and to not be too intimidated by not knowing everything when you're applying.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think, what you, Maritza and Mackenzie both said about learning and showing that you can get to that place and to problem solve, I do think that is super important. Definitely resonates with me. And Maritza, you mentioned kind of like building up, a portfolio, and there were some questions in the chat around that. So I wonder if the group has any tips to share on, building that first portfolio, since we all know that can be very overwhelming.
Yeah, I could probably share on that one, just because that's a very, very near and dear challenge to my heart. And also, like, I don't know how much time we have, so trying to keep it rapid fire so that like maybe we can get through as many of these. Just I think a lot of folks have a lot of good questions. So if I were to like do a portfolio today, I would probably say one, probably stay away. I would advise, this is not like truth or anything, but I would advise like no big like redesigning Google's search page. I think those are very like hard to pull off, and there's a lot of thought that goes into those platforms. So maybe avoid those. I would also say that on the other hand, I think like blue sky projects are very interesting and alluring. So like entirely new platform from ground up, like those are very interesting and alluring, but also hard to like track in terms of metrics, unless maybe you're a founder or something, like maybe ex-founder, and you launch the product. It's not impossible. But if I were doing a portfolio today, I would say pick a product that you really like, and find some unique problem there and solve within that context. It's also very, very likely what you would be doing on the job anyway. This is in a product design context. Most likely what you'll be doing on the job anyway. You can tie it back to some public metrics. It's very, very it's a nice package thing. So for me, really early on, I actually did Spotify group listening, and I reached out to a Spotify designer and had them review it. This was 4 years ago, and that was very, very boxed and it added the whole problem statement, UX research. It was very pointed, and you could really see this is how I'm materially improving this experience versus redesigning Spotify from the ground up, which is an entirely different and probably hard to judge challenge. So that's probably what I would do if I was doing a UX portfolio today.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in real quick. This is also very near and dear, very relatable struggle for every designer. I think Dolu made some really great points about the kinds of projects that you can pick. I would also encourage you to think about your audience. So the only time someone's actually looking at your portfolio, if we consider the recruiting pipeline, is a recruiter when they're looking at your application, and they traditionally have about maybe 30 seconds to 2 minutes, anywhere between that time frame, to go through all of the work and all of the content that you have on your website. So I would encourage you to think about how to be succinct and how to be clear about the main takeaways that you want them to derive in those 30 seconds to 2 minutes. I would say 30 seconds more so for a case study, and 2 minutes overall just for the experience that you're thinking about for the overall portfolio. Another thing when you are presenting your work, oftentimes if you intern and if you have past projects from internships, they typically tend to be under NDA. And while some people password protect their work, there are actually some companies that tell you explicitly that you can't share anything that's under NDA when you're going through their recruiting process. Meta is one of those companies. So it's really important to also remember, if you have self-initiated projects, or if you're doing a redesign, which is a particular feature for a company, that is probably more likely to end up on your slide deck when you get to that round for a company, as opposed to some work that you did as part of a past internship, because sometimes they put those constraints on the work that you are able to show.
Yeah, and I'm going to jump into and say, first of all, I've never met a designer who likes working on their portfolio. So I think we're kind of all in the same boat here. But I think for me, I try to really care about the projects that I put in my portfolio. So that way, you just want to work on them more. You want to make them better. You want to put more spirit into those projects. And I think, especially when you get to an interview, that really, really comes across when you're talking about the work and showing that you care about it. And honestly, I think it makes people want to work with you. So I think if you can find some little nugget of passion in whatever you're working on and just ride that out, that's maybe the best piece of advice I can give you in this moment about your portfolio.
I love that. That totally resonates with me as well. Kelsey had a question in the chat that seems to be getting a lot of +1s, and I think it's definitely related to building up a portfolio and kind of, getting into the industry. And so, it's about how can you stand out as a UX designer when a lot of the job requirements out there say you need at least 2 years of experience. So, how do you go about applying or creating a portfolio when you don't have that professional experience yet? Mackenzie or Resham, do you want to start? Share some thoughts?
Yeah, I was actually going to mention this real quick in the previous question, but
So a really good way to kind of distinguish yourself from other designers who might be applying to the same company is actually when you're like picking the projects that you want to work on to put onto your portfolio. Try and think of the companies that you want to work at and the kind of work that you want to be doing. So for example, if I am someone who is really interested, particularly in working in fintech, let's say, so companies that interest me could be like Robinhood or PayPal, maybe banks, maybe a monetization sort of team within any other company. So in that situation, what I could do is say, okay, I'm really interested in working at Robinhood. So how about I analyze their app and analyze how I can show them that I can create value for them, identify some sort of, like product strategy or gap that they haven't yet explored potentially, and do a case study around that to show them, hey, I'm already thinking about the business problems that you have, the context that you have, the challenges that I can maybe join you as a designer and help you in solving, and how I would approach that. So that's a lot of proof that you're giving them up front by showing them this is all of the value that I could potentially bring you if you were to hire me as an employee. And that would set you apart from anyone else who's maybe, doing a case study on, maybe they redesign like a part or a feature for Google Docs, because this, when the recruiter is looking at it, when your future manager or future teammates are looking at it, it is way, way more relevant to them and way, way more within context, because they're thinking about those problems day in and day out. So they're able to directly see that your mental models and the way that you're thinking about these things is directly applicable to the problems that you would be solving as a full-time designer in the future at their company.
That's a great tip. I know we just have a few minutes left, but I know, Mackenzie, you wanted to share a little bit on this question. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, especially coming out of the bootcamp experience, which is indeed an experience in itself, I would agree with everything Wisham has said, on top of, don't have your entire portfolio just be bootcamp projects. And the way you find these real world projects is there are a lot of volunteer opportunities online. I know Democracy Hacks is always looking for volunteers. In the summer, actually, Hawaii Zoning Atlas will probably be looking for a few new UX volunteers, if any of you are interested in that kind of stuff. But the other biggest thing is just reach out to people. I have a community of different types of professionals in my arsenal. And so when I started my journey, I just started to reach out to them and say, hey, do you need your website redesigned? I want to work through my UX process. And then I would pass it off to a mentor or someone more senior. And then making sure that your portfolio, it's going to look cookie cutter, as soon as you get out of boot camp. And it just is what it is until you learn what you need to learn. I would just recommend keep trying different projects, keep asking people to review your portfolio. Any chance you get to talk, this goes back to networking, any chance you get to talk to someone, ask them if they can review a case study, ask them if you can present that case study to them. That's been one of my biggest helpers in landing interviews and getting to final round sometimes, is saying, hey, recruiter friend, can you please take 30 minutes out of your day so I can present this case study to you? Can you give me any tips on what you would like to see from a junior designer or from a more senior designer? And take a big breath. Portfolios are miserable sometimes.
Totally. So much great advice here. Thank you so much for everybody, for sharing, everybody. And I'll pass it back to Alex.
Thank you. I did see that Liza just quickly raised her hand. Liza, do you have like a 60-second addition here?
Yeah, I will also say for your portfolio, especially working at an agency, if that's something that you're looking for, the agency that I currently work at, it just so happened that my portfolio website looked very similar to our portfolio, or like our website for the agency. And so that immediately showed the people who were looking to hire me that like my design tastes match up with, the agency's design tastes. Like, so it's more of a, like, they can visualize you working for them almost in a way. So obviously, like, don't copy the website of an agency for your portfolio, but if you like have an agency that you're really looking for work at, feel free to do your best to make little design tweaks to aesthetically make it appear like like their website.
What a great note. I'm glad I passed the mic back to you. Y'all, we are wrapping up here today. Can we get some chat love for these panelists? I was just sitting here taking notes. I had teammates taking notes. We were trying to grab these sound bites. Y'all have been so incredibly generous with your time, sharing your experiences, your tips, your wisdom. I am not a designer and I'm taking some major, major inspiration away from this session. So I hope you are all seeing the chat and seeing the gratitude that's happening. For folks that are on the call today, yes, this was recorded and yes, we will be sending it out to you after the call. All of our panelists have invited you to connect with them on LinkedIn after this. So if there was somebody who shared a perspective or a specific experience that really resonated with you, please definitely feel free to find them on LinkedIn. When you're watching the recording, the first couple minutes will be all of their LinkedIns. And the other thing I want to do is invite you to our session tomorrow. This kicked off Figma for EDU's Early Career Week. Tomorrow's session, we're talking about what a non-traditional path to design looks like. We're going to be talking about boot camps. We're going to be talking about portfolios. We're going to be talking about career changing and just continuing this conversation about what it looks like to transition into a career with design. So I'm going to go ahead and drop the RSVP in the chat. Please make sure that you register for each session that you're going to be attending so that we can make sure that we have the right Zoom link. But without further ado, y'all have been incredible. Thank you so much to everyone who came and these amazing panelists. I am just feeling so inspired. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.